Okay, so we are live. So this is Jim Hamilton and Keita Spock. How's that? Close?
Perfect.
So my company's Core Resonance. Keita, why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself so everybody knows?
Yeah.
Besides smiling face, that is.
My business is Chaos Communications, so it's basically morphed as I've evolved, I think, from a strategic communications company focusing on public relations and publicity to moving into the area of holistic well-being and healing that comes from looking within, that comes from researching happiness as I've done in the last number of years. So my external positioning of people has become an internal one as well. And I basically combine the two together when I'm dealing with clients.
That sounds like a lot of fun, and you help people unfold their very nature right in front of not only your eyes, but their eyes too, huh?
That's what I do. And it's a lot of fun, and it can be also quite telling in the sense that sometimes there are surprises.
And not everybody wants to go.
Not everybody wants to go into some of those areas, but sometimes those areas speak of themselves. They self-manifest. And I'm sure you've had clients, Jim, where they come in and they have an unexplainable experience, a rash, or they know they've got high blood pressure because their doctors told them, and you're advocating for them too.
Absolutely. So my world, Core Resonance, is about the part that resistance plays in reality creating. I say that our natural state is an intact connection with the cosmos, whatever that means to different people. Obviously, we have an inner dialogue, we have an inner connection, and the more we can relate to that. In fact, I was just counseling somebody just recently where he's working with me, and he had the insight when the TV kind of blinked or acted up. I think he was watching Netflix at night one night, and the TV kind of acted up or the whatever, and his insight was to go to bed, and he didn't. He monkeyed with the television or whatever it was so that it worked, and he stayed up and ended up being up too late. He was tired the next day, and he's now done this a couple of days in a row, but he's starting to to better see the insights that are available. In other words, the TV flickers, he gets the insight to go to bed, the mind overrides it, he stays up, ends up being up too late, he's tired the next day. And so the resistance is kind of synonymous with the mind, where we get these insights and they're always there and we override them. And then we go off on that tangent. And so part of my work about is, of course, how we move out of resistance, how we move into allowing, how we allow that guidance that's always been there to become available, such that it takes precedence over the mind, second guessing it, overriding it, blah, blah, blah. And it is a lot of fun.
It is, yeah. Those insights, you can call them universal. They're universal hints to you, and they pop, and they happen more frequently. Not because they are actually happening more frequently, but when you become aware, then you begin to notice these lovely hints, these suggestions, these subtle suggestions that occur. That may be that you get your something's caught in the door and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to take this too. And that catching in the door is no longer a nuisance. It's actually the door, the universe saying, hey, Keita, you forgot something else. And so in turning back and getting yourself out of the door, whether it's your sleeve or whatever, you suddenly go, oh, I forgot my sunglasses, or I should take that notebook, or I need the paper. Again, those kind of nuisance things, because Jim, when you talk about the TV going on the fritz, generally the mind sees that as an interruption, an unpleasant interruption, or
of its agenda.
Yeah, exactly. And if you turn that on its head and you realize, oh my gosh, that's actually telling me something. It's really telling me something. Then this whole process becomes a lot of fun.
So you made a really good distinction early on in that remark. It's not that more of them happen, or more. It's that they were always there, and as you become sensitive and listen and pay attention, they become more evident. And in fact, solutions are right beside the problem, if but you could see it. And usually, a problem is a variation on a resistance of some sort, or a product of resistance, for which the solution is right there, which has to do with letting go. And so this inner dialogue, this inner communication, these insights, the recognition that we're not on our own, that we're part of something bigger, which sounds kind of airy-fairy, and for some people that's fair, but for people that live in a high sensitivity world, how do artists put their paint on canvases, and how do photographers be in the right place time after time after time to get that right snapshot? And in fact, I'm just finishing up this book about Keith Richards, right? The Rolling Stones, the lead guitar guy. I didn't know the Rolling Stones from a hole in the wall, hardly. But I have a lot of respect for Keith Richards as an individual in this 600 pages. And yeah, he did his fair share of heroin and all that kind of stuff. And he also popped out the other end. But he talks about how they came to rely on that magic and their music and their songs that they wrote. And those guys have been going for, I don't know if they've been going 40 years now. I imagine they've been
half a century. Yeah, they're hitting their 70s.
Yeah.
Well into that. Tell me, in terms of Keith, does he talk about any kind of presense that he feels or sees when he's about to create? Does he actually describe the essence of maybe an aha moment as it is to them in terms of being a band creating music?
Well, I have to listen to that question a couple different ways to make it easy to respond, but I would say that he's absolutely reliant on that magic, and sometimes he knows that by stumbling around with chords or riffs, I think he calls them, the music will find itself, and he will write that part of it and part of the lyrics and then give it over to Mick Jagger to finish the words. And they've been doing this for 40 some odd years. And so he's very reliant on it. He's very aware of it. And he's also very aware of the resonance that he has with the other people he plays with. And it's a huge component. It's like being inside the mind of a musician. And some of us think the Rolling Stones those guys got to be crazy. I mean, we've all grown up with their music, but maybe I relate to the Beatles better, or the Four Individuals better than these guys. But to discover the depth of what has been their music for so long, and to realize that they tap in to grab it, and the resonance of how they work together and all that, it's really it's actually a treat to read. I'm enjoying the book, and I probably only have about 75 pages out of 600 to go, and it's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a good affirmation what you're speaking about, the fact that who can tap into the universe, who has this power? Everybody. First of all, you don't have to be an artist or have an evidently creative thrust that somebody will say, well, he's an artist or she's a singer, therefore they have this kind of artistic connection with the planet, or with their muse, or with their internal soul, however you want to describe it. I think it's important, Jim, that people understand that everybody, absolutely everybody, has the privilege and has that access. In other words, all of us can access this magic in terms of simply, as you said earlier, listening and just slowing down a little bit, just slowing your actions to the point where you even can realize what it is you are actually doing or not doing in order to make life easier for yourself.
Well, and so that's part of the game is, as I watch the species, watch humanity, we become more efficient, where we all used D-size batteries in our flashlights 15 or 20 years ago. Everything is AAA batteries, and not even AA do you see anymore. and computer power and everything imaginable becomes more efficient. And as we discover our inner nature, will our efficiency truly grow and exponentially. And as you might say, as we step into our power, luckily, or thank God, whatever you want to call it, we're stepping into our power in truth. And in fact, our power comes to us by listening and learning how to plug into what's true. And happily at the same time, it happens to be efficient. And that's what drives us. And that's where we're being driven.
Yeah. I think it's important to mention sometimes the word efficient is construed or set in a context that seems to be more mechanical or logical. It's a favorite word of the mind. And so I think it may be significant to underscore that the use of the word efficient in this context is of an organic nature. It is of an organism, of our organism, that is accelerating its ability and capability to be attuned with the universe.
Well, it is about finding our inner nature, but even at that, efficiency, even in its basic level, the more you are in step with your own inner nature, the less dumb stuff you do, the less times you have to back up, the less times you have to start over again, the less time. I mean, my world is synchronicity, harmony, and order, and flow. And I guarantee you that's highly efficient. In fact, my mind is turned off most of the time. But the benefits of plugging in and learning, plugging into your spirituality, yeah, you're right. I don't want to make it sound like it's so mechanical, but it amps up the quality of life and living. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that using the word efficient is incorrect. All I'm trying to point out is that the word efficient in this case is used at its optimal, at its optimum best. In other words, it's not a mechanically generated phrase, or we have to remove the idea. Maybe it could be, and here's where my own interpretation comes into play. That I usually perceive being efficient as being logical, detail-oriented, machine-like, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
So taking it into the level or into the context that you're using is actually a new way for me to see how something that is organic and totally natural is in fact also efficient.
Yeah. So I see your distinction. Of course, my backdrop is reality creating, how we create realities. And a great deal of our reality creating is resistance based, reactionary based, and there's nothing efficient about that at all. I mean, a single reactionary remark, a single smart aleck remark could take 2 years to overcome. I don't care if it's flowers every day for 2 years to your girlfriend or who knows what. We can get ourselves in all kinds of trouble in resistance, and then we have to work our way out of it. And so efficient is when our happenstances are in front of us, and they drop in front of us, and they continue to drop in front of us, and we go along this pathway that is much simpler in our lives. We're always making choices. Eventually, it comes to, instead of choice between pain and pleasure, it becomes a choice between, as I've said before, strawberry and chocolate ice cream, or even the more subtle choices between two kinds of chocolate ice cream. And so as we learn to become more efficient, we're better in our choices, we're better in our decisions, we're better in our outcomes. It feeds on itself. The mind gets to be put aside even more. We move into a new realm of operating. Hey, this sounds good. Don't you think we should try it?
Yeah. So you're making choices between pluses, between two positives, rather than what is traditionally seen as the better road or the elite path. And here's an interesting, you choose the path of least resistance. Isn't that interesting that phrase actually I'd love to, it'd be interesting to find out where that phrase originated. Because if you say to choose the path of least resistance, you are actually identifying your theory. But we have used that phrase for, for centuries, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Let's see here real quick. I imagine it's physical or metaphorical pathway provides the least resistance to forward motion by a given object or entity. I was hoping to, let's see, tell you its origination, like Hindu or Buddhism, and I don't really see that, but I'm sure. I don't see it real quick, and now they're heading off into fluids and all moving into physics. But it's funny. Metaphysics, beyond physics, is the world we play with, and path of least resistance. That's allowing. That's exactly right.
That's exactly right. So there you are. Or maybe it's an etymological, or a word, or history or word. You could take up. But I'm literally funny. We've been talking about this for a long while, and all of a sudden this phrase pops. It pops for me because I am so much more aware. And yet we haven't really used the phrase very much before.
So conversation and openness and exploring leads to new discoveries and new awarenesses. And if we were in resistance or arguing or if we were disagreeing about what efficiency means, that's where we would be. And we didn't do that at all. We found more and more commonality in efficiency into something else. And now my next remark is that man-made science, physics and all that is actually a copy of nature. And you can very plainly see that water takes the most efficient route. It takes the path of least resistance. And as you see that, as philosophers see that over centuries of time, a long time ago, they learn certain principles, they learn how to apply them in their life, and there we are taking nature and bringing it to the world of mankind, and mankind learns at its certain rate and speed.
Yeah. How it is, I want to make a remark here and I don't want to belabor the point, we'll leave it after this, but the path of least resistance. Do you notice, Jen, that when sometimes it's used to denote someone that perhaps is weak or is not going to confront or can't take on the battle or is not as courageous as they should be? Do you see how there's been a twist in what is essentially a truth, and it's become a lesser than it should be?
So that's the conundrum, if that's the proper word. There's two sides to everything. Humanity has been doing this male thing, or this rigidity, and allowing, or the path of least, like a Buddhist or these monks, they're not considered powerful or strong. Some people perceive them as weak, and that's what happened. So that's resistance to. Frankly, it's resistance to something that people don't understand. I think Mahatma Gandhi and a few of these other people would tell you that and even Martin, what was his name?
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King. He was very big into non-resistance. That's what he taught.
Because he emulated Gandhi. There was a great sense of respect and reverence for one for the other.
But right now, the United States is a big leader on the planet. They're big into overwhelming stuff. They're big into overbuying things. They're big into, I don't want to get started on that. We went into Afghanistan when all that was new. We undermined that whole country with all the money we paid under the table. We totally destroyed the economic base of that country by payments under the table. I mean, so there's that idea of overdoing things. but I guess we have to explore all that as part of the discovery of what's true. And there's so much overt stuff, but I think that's that polarity that we all learn about. And frankly, there's more people than ever on the planet that I'll give you an example. There was I've been paying attention to this Trump thing a little bit because this convention started yesterday, and there's a frontal nudity. What's that gal's? I don't know what her name is. She's on television late at night along with these other programs. I'm not sure what her name is, but she was interviewing two different people in Cleveland. One was the police chief or somebody similar to the police chief. He says, "I'm not letting my family anywhere near that area. All this is all open carry guns, and we're not even remotely prepared. We don't have the training. We don't have the equipment." He's basically saying, "I want more money, but." And then there's another woman who says, "Things are wonderful," and she calls Cleveland, she calls it Believeland. And so there's an entirely different perspective, and she's got this incredible smile. She's part of the Republican thing, I assume, but she's pro Cleveland. She's pro Cleveland having the opportunity to host this event. She's very thumbs up. She's upbeat. Then you got the police chief saying, "Well, we don't have enough guns."
Mm-hmm.
And it's the old perspective and it's the new perspective, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the world we live in right now. And it's getting, for people that don't have a lot of that sensitivity, it's becoming obvious that we have certain kinds of problems, and becoming more and more boisterous is not solving problems.
The thing is, wouldn't you say that, like human beings, cities, countries also have to go through this evolution? They have to actually experience their sense of growing, their sense of evolving, in order to then understand what might be a better way. Maybe, and the word better is even, it's already a naming. What might be the way that is best for them, which may not be the best way or the better way or for somebody else. As we all know, my way is going to be different from your way, but the act of investigating and self-exploring is probably similar, as would be with a city or even a country that is realizing it needs to somehow reinvent itself, or at least explore some new types of ways of being. Witness the UK, witness what's going on there. It's obviously a new kind of way for them to explore how they want to be as a country in the future.
Well, so we're all growing up. This plane of existence, the Earth, and its polarity: high, low, fast, slow, in, out, up, down. And so the polarity is how we learn. And it appears for some, and whether it's a city or a country or a state or an individual or a church or whatever, it appears that they have to reach a certain threshold of pain before they finally decide to look for something else. And I would say America in general is kind of reaching that point. We've been doing, well, I don't feel like getting political, so I won't.
No, but it's I feel if you describe it as a form of a tipping point, where there are certain factors and circumstances, whether they're within an individual or whether they're within a city or whether they're within a country, that are pressing in such a way that the call to action, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an action as much as it is an awareness that then compels the individual, the city, to take stock, because you can't change without self-assessment. You wouldn't know what to change to, or if you didn't first observe yourself or conduct a form of self-assessment. Some of these self-assessments are so extreme and so fast and quick, as they are accelerating in our day and age, which has been proven. The fact that all events and all processes seem to be accelerating. And it's almost as if the world is saying, "Come on, we got to move this along. We got to get to that other side, whatever that other side is." So all this upheaval, in one way, is totally natural.
It accentuates the decision making. So for example, I don't want to get too political here, but so you've actually had policemen and shooting people for a long time. It's kind of become accepted in the court system. They always get off and this and that. And now you've got the repercussion coming back, which is people are actually becoming snipers. It's only happened really seriously twice. But the point is the police have to look at, okay, are we going to escalate this up, or are we going to find a solution, because they know that escalating it up is not the answer. In other words, certain people, and I think it's been individuals both times, but they've finally responded, and I'm not making them right. That's not my point. But the question is, if the police go and escalate even further, it's very obvious what's going to happen, and I think it's obvious that it's time to find another way. Mm-hmm. In other words, we all need to be treated like equals. We need to go back to basics.
Right. The aspect of having resolve to just continue, as opposed to, certainly from my point of view, from what I've seen and read here, is there is not resolve in that sort of the stiff upper lip, or the sense of creating the wall or making things firmer. There's actually been an incredible emotional fallout from groups and from infrastructures that typically hold solid. If you talk about the police force or authority in that respect, who are protecting us, the fallout in that case has taken on an emotional hue, which is quite rare. I don't think it's been as manifested or so showcased in previous times or in the past. And to me, this is evocative and a sign that, as you say, these forces of authority, which are supposed to be forces, are actually saying, no, we can't continue to just butt our heads against something we don't agree with. There is another way. And I think it was quite good the way you put it, that the solution can be found beside the problem.
I've actually started an article. I wrote it. I've got a couple of big projects going on. I wrote kind of I don't know if I'd call it a proposal, but it was a request for some information. And part of it has to do with the solution comes from the problem, I think, is maybe what it's titled. I'm going to turn it into a 3-part article. And if that's the solution comes from the problem. So if you have to have the contrast of pain versus pleasure, if you have to have the contrast of strawberry versus chocolate, and I think as long as we're on this plane, as long as we're on this planet, there's always going to be the subtleness of choice, and choice comes from two choices, and as we learn to take the uphill route, it gets easier. There's that efficiency again. And so we've got police departments, we've got all kinds of stuff here having to really look. So, because there's my cat's butt. Maybe that's just, anyway, cat tail. You see, what's happened is since 9/11, the police forces have been being militarized with free surplus stuff from 9/11, and all the police have gotten really all hunky-dory, and it's not been a good direction, and this is what it's looking like now, and the people are kind of standing up, and I saw something today, a kid who's 15 years old, black kid, saying, and I think his dad might have been one of the policemen that was killed, and he's going, hey, look, we got to stop this. We got to stop the violence. He's 15. We got to stop this. And so there's a choice of escalating it or looking at it in a new way. And I frankly think we're up for it. I know we are. Mm-hmm. And And then we just need to have better choices for president. Or maybe we just all need to stand in our own power, get into our own power.
Do you see, in terms of what we're talking about, Jim, do you see a shift or a change in how we elect and how voters will in the future choose people based on where core residents will take us?
Wait, now you just threw me a big curve. I thought I had an answer to that. You throw in the core residence part. Okay. Well, so what we know first off,
All right.
well,
No, I'm saying, this is the context we're operating in. We're all moving there. And I'm saying, all right, if we're moving there, then how does the complexion start looking about someone who is representing us? Or do we even have representatives in the context of core residents, and let's say with a cluster colony?
all right. So first off, what I say, and I've said this, I'm actually kind of a political person. I try to keep it under the covers, if you will. But what I've always said is the government is a reflection of the people, and in the naivete of the population, the government does what it wants. And so my answer is, as you empower the population, the government will continue to be a reflection of the people. So that's actually what is underneath my work, is empowering the population. And what I've ended up coming up with or discovering is that when you empower the population, they become exponential in their contribution. And so the formula is, in the naivete of the population, the government plays, and as we empower the population, the government continues to be a reflection of the people. And so I'm absolutely convinced that easily enough, just by leave core residents out of it, we're learning so fast now. The thing that's going on the planet is we're making our choices and decisions much more quickly because we're seeing the results of our choices and decisions, and we make new choices and decisions, just like this police thing and all this. Everything is ramped up. It's happening faster. New choices, new results. We look at our results, new choices again, and that's what's going on anyway. And then you take components like people that meditate, or people that want to become part of colonies, that want to rapidly advance consciousness by bumping their consciousness up toward, say, 700, where single person at 700 counterbalances the negativity of 70 million people. You start creating bands of small groups of people doing that, where they get out of their mind entirely, become a means by which innate intelligence expresses through them and coalesces, coherence, my favorite term. And what I think is that consciousness is coming, and for the ones of us who can identify it and learn how to relax and let it express through us, we become a means by which we influence and contribute to the unfolding of society. How was that for an answer? I covered everything.
That was a universal answer. No, it's good. That's good. I like the idea of the reflection, the mirroring of. As you know, as we all know, if we're in the company, we're at a party, we're talking to someone, and there is a commonality, you're feeling comfortable, let's say, with someone you're speaking, you'll notice that you may even, the gestures may start complementing one another. There may be a sense of the foot forward, the other foot comes forward. It's a dance, but that dance is wonderfully nuanced and subtle. That is an expression of two people who are energetically complementing one another.
In sync, yes.
Yeah.
Resonating.
Yeah. So if we take two and we multiply, and we now have a group, and now we have a city where there is that kind of commonality, then my gosh, we have got an amazing sense of resonance. What the big challenge here is as you've pointed out, Jim, there will be those of us, and people have called them light workers, they've called others as being thought leaders. They've called them as leading philosophers. They've called them science science researchers, whatever that title is, of someone who is perhaps anticipating the future and what it will bring in a much more quick and efficacious way than someone who is maybe going to be following that particular individual. But the mirroring, I think, is crucial, because if you are gravitating to those who are thinking like you, and here's your choice, here's your big decision. You're either with those who are thinking for the good, or you are with those who are thinking about the not so good.
You know, so the 12 premises of core resonance colonies is 12 arguments, 12 principles, not really principles, but premises. Premises are like expectations, I would say, is what a premise is. A premise is an understanding with an expectation. That's what I would call a premise. And so there's 12 premises of core resonance colonies. And what occurs to me, and I think it's a biblical remark, that says, when two or more are gathered in my name. Now, I don't remember the rest of that. But so you talk about resonance, you talk about two people coming together at a party and having a conversation where they're in a similar space and discovering their similarities. And they do become, in gathering together, they become more than they were when they were by themselves. If nothing else, they support each other because they discover, like we do in our conversations. But when you add a God component, and that's a very poor way to say that. Let me try that. How would I do that differently? I wouldn't want to be so, that sounds a little too, but when two people are plugged into their very nature, into their truth, where the subtle nature of their living and their life becomes paramount, where the subtle nature of their life and their hints and their inner dialogue drives them, and they've learned how to plug into a bigger picture, a bigger cosmos, a bigger synchronicity. When two people come together like that, that is even more power than two people that meet at a party that agree. Because don't forget, you can get two people that can meet at a party, just to take it to an extreme, that they both hate so-and-so. They hate this, they blah, blah, and they can be in resonance in that. But you can be in resonance in a much cleaner manner, like you were suggesting. But what if you have people who are lifetime meditators that come together in an intention to make the world a better place? We know it already goes on, but you see, a colony is that principle, exaggerated isn't the word I want, but exponentially so. And I think you could go back to when two or more gathered in my name. We're starting to get into an interesting principle.
Yeah, and again, the truth of that statement and the truth of very simple statements are profound. And that's something else I think that we come to, or you, when you're looking to be a little bit more, literally a little more thoughtful about yourself and life. That some statements that have been thrown out and accepted in a very trite or superficial way have in fact profound implications. Or you may go back to some statements, perhaps in a favorite book or a novel, and you begin to appreciate maybe what you read at 20, at age 40, you're looking at it and you're going, gee, that really, now I know what that means. Or now I'm getting it better. Maybe I don't quite know it all yet, but I'm getting it better. So the idea of rereading perhaps something that has been given you and someone said, hey, this is pretty valuable, or this might be worthwhile for you. I think that would be my one piece of advice for tonight's conversation, is to go back and reread something that already impressed you, but may in fact have a double, triple, multifold layer to it.
Or you could just keep going on.
Yep.
It's like today's call. We had no idea what we were going to talk about. We didn't even know we were going to do a call till a few minutes ago. what we've covered. We have covered some really wild and interesting territory here. I mean, packed.
Yeah, it's packed. It's pretty packed. I'm delighted. You know what book I'm reading now that I'm having a good time with? It's called, Ken Follett.
Ken-
Follett.
I know the name. I don't know who it is offhand.
Yeah, he writes. He's written The Eye of the Needle and various other novels. Anyway, I'm reading The Pillars of the Earth. One of his. It's not a recent book. It's about 1,000 pages, so it's on a par with your Keith Richards' life. But again, it's a saga set in the 12th, 13th, 14th centuries, a century of England, dealing with abbeys and power struggles and witches in forests and very, very, very interesting. Very interesting. Having fun with it. It's the kind of book you read in the summer. First of all, because it's 1,000 pages, so you need a little downtime, and that's what I've got a bit of this
Well, from writing for so many years, and I'm at my computer, my desk, often till 10 o'clock at night. I mean, very often. And so then when I would go to bed, I would watch a little bit of a movie, but I've finally gotten so tired of the movies. There's so much, violence was, I used to ignore it because it was, because I knew it wasn't real. The Bruce Willis movies and all that kind of stuff. And I really got to a point where it's become unacceptable. And I finally started reading again. And I thought, well, after spending all day on the computer and reading, I thought it'd be the last thing I want. But hell, my mind and brain and whatever, it took a while, transferred over. And so now I'm reading at night. And it was something I didn't think I wanted to do, and truly enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
I need to start. It's The Alphabet and the Goddess, I think is what it's called.
Who's it by?
Let me grab it real quick. 1 second.
Yeah.
It's called The Goddess. It's
Versus the Goddess. Okay.
the author is Leonard Shlain. I met a gentleman a few months ago, Cameron Powers. You can probably find his website, CameronPowers.com or .net. He's a musician, and he and his girlfriend partner were in Baghdad 8 days after we attacked Baghdad playing music. And he's a linguist. He's 5 languages. Very, 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 a lot of depth to this guy. I've learned every time we talk, I learn from him. And this book he recommended. And I've got one of my other clients who's actually finishing reading the Bible right now. I assume he's finishing it up and plans on starting this next. So maybe how far are you in your 1,000 pages?
Oh, I'm about a third through, but I'll finish it because when I get into reading, I can read quite at length. So I've got another one that I was recommended, and I can't think of it. It's called The Ghost Rider. It deals with The Ghost Rider by Neil Peart. It deals with death and dying and our sort of reflection with that. Highly recommended as well. So we've got a few things here to go over. We'll have a lot of subject matter to cover, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the alphabet versus the goddess, right?
Yeah, you know what? The point is that once language was reduced to an alphabet, the feminine was left out. Written language is a masculine deal, and the precepts of the languaging are male dominated, where the feminine is more the emotional and more the depth that goes beyond the words.
Right.
So as cultures went as they went to an alphabet, the feminine got pushed away. And so one of the points of this book is, and I haven't started it, but it's from my conversations with Cameron, is that as we go to video, we're starting to engage, if you will, both halves of the brain instead of just the left brain, if you will. And we're moving. So we've dropped down to the bottom at the alphabet and linear reading. And as we go to video, we're starting to bring the feminine back in. We're starting to bring in the emotion that you don't quite find in the writing. I don't know if I explained that or I translated the remarks or what the book is supposed to be about, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah.
The component.
All right. Well, I think we're going to have something, a few interesting things to talk about next week.
Yeah, exactly. So we just, and by the way, in the time we've been here, Trump has been nominated. He's now the presidential candidate for the Republicans. So,
oh my goodness,
that's a funny deal.
Well, as we said earlier, sometimes the court contortions that a state, a country go through is exactly what is supposed to happen for it to rediscover itself. Yeah.
Well, as I've said before, I think like when, people got all up in arms about 9/11 and Bush said, hey, let's go attack Afghanistan, and while we're at it, let's go attack Iraq. And people went, yeah, let's go get them and get our tanks and our helmets and all our stuff and let's go get them. And I think that after a while, I think a portion of the population that got gung-ho about that went, oops, I'm not sure this is such a good idea.
Yeah.
And by the second election, which nobody would have guessed Bush would have got in twice, except it's kind of preordained anyway. But there's even more people that realized waterboarding and all this stuff is nuts. And my point is that it's like what's going on at the convention this week. People are all wound up about, well, this is wrong and this is right. This is what we need to do. But I think as these people hear themselves, a portion of them grow up. And it's the species discovering itself. You see, it wasn't that many years ago where America was founded by white males and basically landowners. And to be a landowner meant you had to have slaves. That's the way it was back then. And certainly women didn't own land and women didn't vote. It was the landowners who were the responsible parties. And that's changed. And it's widened out, and there's such a much broader. I'm actually losing my my thought here. I hope I can pull this off. But the point is that as we go wider, we encompass more, and we're learning how. In other words, America started out in a very restricted deal. Yeah, there were some great ideals, but it was also very restrictive, and I guess I know where I was going. The middle class had always been really kind of quiet. There really wasn't much of a middle class. There was the landowners and everybody else. And now the middle class is kind of coming up and out. And they really kind of need to be heard, but they come from having not been heard because 50 years ago, the education wasn't there. Everybody was workers. There were factory workers or whatever. And all of this middle class is coming up and out, and it all has to be heard and it all has to be expressed. As these people are expressing themselves, I think a portion of them are outgrowing what they initially assumed was their anger or what was right. And I think slowly but surely people move to the realms of allowing versus the resistance thing. I think I kind of butchered that idea, and we're growing up, and so we watch the Hillary thing, we watch the Trump thing. I don't think either of them are good choices, and we reap the results of the choices and the anger and the resentment that we've voted with, whether it's voting by marching or resistance and reaction. And I think because it all happens faster now, we get to have these and then learn from them and make better choices and decisions. And I think as we make new choices and new decisions and faster new choices and new decisions, we will avert a problem toward the last minute.
Yeah, we've got our consequences a lot faster than ever before. Anyway, a pleasure. I'm glad we connected.
Yes, so you're gone for the next week? Off?
Yeah. Well, I'm not off, but that I won't be around for our discussion. So, but I'll be back in August.
All right. Well, very nice to spend some time. We always have lots of fun
Oh
doing.
yeah, yeah. Always some good wording, some good stuff coming out.
Big
Anyway,
hug.
take it easy. And thanks for sending me that other stuff. And we'll see you again.
All right. Thank you, Keita. Have a great afternoon, great evening.
Likewise, Jim. Bye bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.